Still with us, Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, Pastor John Hagee, and Ambassador Dori Gold. And I was telling you that on my board over here of the radical socialists and Islamics, they're working together. And what people don't understand is they don't have to agree with each other on an outcome. They just have to agree on, we don't like this system and we want it overturned. And we were talking during the break that that's the Sunnis and the Shias. They don't agree, but...
You know, Glenn, it's interesting because Einstein said years ago, if my theory of relativity is a great success, England will say I'm a great Englishman, France will say I'm a great Frenchman. If I'm a failure, they'll all say I'm a Jew. And somehow, when it comes to Sunni and Shia, they can have all the theological differences in the world, but when you put Jew in there, we bring them together like no one else.
Isn't it exactly what happened in World War I or World War II?
World War II.
World War II, Russia and Germany, at first, the communists and the fascists were together, and part of it, anti-capitalist, anti-Jew. And then they figure out, well, once we kill all those, then we'll fight each other. We'll see who gets the world.
And also, I think what goes on today is there's this moral equivalence. It's obscene. It's immoral. The arsonist and the firefighter. You hurl a rocket at Israel. Right. Israel responds, and they're culpable for the response, more so than the person who hurls the rocket.
Dori, how much sleep do you lose in Israel trying to, I mean, because you must feel the possibility, at least, of a global pounce on Israel. How much sleep do you guys lose?
Well, let me characterize the problem. Israel is a very strong country. The Jewish people are not in a position that they were in the 1930s. We're able to defend ourselves. And by the way, the United States is a very strong country. The point of weakness is a moral weakness. It's a moral weakness coming out of Europe, which puts pressure on us today, and to some extent puts pressure on the U.S. As you started your show, you pointed out that Israel was being set up. And the point I'm trying to make, and I tried to make a little earlier, is that if you strip Israel of the defenses that it has to protect itself from this regional tsunami of radical Islam, then you leave Israel exposed. That is why we must assure something which American presidents have guaranteed Israel in writing in the past, that whatever happens in the peace process, whatever happens in the region, at the end of the day, Israel is entitled to defensible borders, and it must protect those defensible borders so that it can protect itself. And we should not allow a European initiative to force Israel to give up those territorial barriers that have protected it for more than 40 years. That is what is happening now.
When Shimon Peres was in Washington, it was again awkward, I thought. When Benjamin Netanyahu came in, it wasn't our good friend from Israel. It was an awkward time. I don't even think there was a joint press conference. Shimon Peres, he was out in the front yard of the White House giving a press conference himself. How would you describe our relationship with Israel? How would you describe the temperature in the room at the White House with Israel?
Look, you can get into the tactical minutia, and I understand why one gets drawn to it. It's dramatic. But fundamentally, regardless of this choreography, the U.S. and Israel are very close allies, probably one of the most intimate allies. I recall President Kennedy saying to Golda Meir in 1962 that we want a relationship with Israel like the relationship we have with Great Britain. That's a very special relationship. I recall the head of U.S. Air Force Intelligence in 1986 saying to the New York Times that Israel supplies intelligence to the United States the equivalent of 5 CIAs. The U.S. helps Israel, Israel helps the United States. And sometimes there are officials in Washington or elsewhere or in Europe who want to send some kind of statement by this kind of manipulation or that. But we are allies, and just let's keep the big picture in mind.
Make the case that, because there are a lot of people, because there's something happening in America, that Americans are beginning to disconnect with both parties. And they are becoming much more like the founders, some. And the founders would have said, we're friends to everybody and enemies to nobody. We mind our own business. America doesn't have the money or resources anymore to be the policeman of the world. Explain to somebody what it means to stand by Israel. We have to go over and fight wars with you, or what does it mean?
That is precisely the point. Israel never asked the United States to risk the lives of American troops to defend it. We don't want to be West Germany in the Cold War. We don't want to be South Korea with American troops deployed along the demilitarized zone. There are people today who are suggesting that Israel should get out of that great strategic buffer that protects it, the Jordan Valley, and put NATO forces there. Put the 82nd Airborne there. And we're complimented by the thought. But we don't want that to happen. We don't want American troops or any other troops defending Israel. We want to fulfill the doctrine of the founder of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, of self-reliance, that Israel defends itself by itself. And what we ask for them in the United States is diplomatic support so we can maintain that position.
I have to tell you, I love you as an ally. With an answer like that, I love you as an ally. I wish our own citizens would say, we'll defend ourselves and we'll take care of ourselves and stand on our own 2 feet. Rabbi.
Well, I remember Golda Meir, and I'm sure Dory does, and everyone else here does. She said, when someone offered, well, America will protect you, she said, there's only one problem. By the time you get here, we won't be here. And I think what Dory says must be stated. And then look at Lebanon. Look at the Lebanese-Israeli border. Do you remember how the UN arranged for a ceasefire, and there was going to be the de-arming, right, demilitarization? And now you have more missiles there than before the ceasefire. So God forbid you got to rely on someone else to protect you.
Why, Pastor Hagee? And we'll get into some other things, but let me kind of go off of the same principle. Then what is Israel in need of? If they don't need that, what is it that they need?
I think that what Israel would appreciate from America is a president that would be vocally and visibly firm on the fact that they have the right to exist, the right to defensible borders, and the right to defend themselves against their enemies.
Okay, well, there are a lot of people working on that, but it's going to take about 2 years. What is it? What is it? And Dory, maybe I should ask you, what is it that we can do as American people?
Well, let me raise just one other point that's connected to all of this, and with Pastor Hagee there and the rabbi, I have to point this out. That's the future of Jerusalem. Under Israel, right, Jerusalem is open to all faiths. You know, if you look what's been going on in the Middle East the last 10, 15 years, you see that Buddhist statues in the Bamiyan Valley were exploded by the Taliban. You see churches in Pakistan and Iraq coming under attack. You see Egyptian Coptic Christians being assaulted by their neighbors. Only a free and democratic Israel will protect Jerusalem for all faiths. Otherwise, this anti-religious trend, this trend to assault non-Muslim believers that's occurring across the Middle East will come to the heart of Jerusalem. I've said this to American secretaries of state. I've said this to many U.S. officials. We need your backing to keep Jerusalem united under the sovereignty of Israel.
I will tell you that I have been to Israel, and if you have not been there, it is one of the most amazing experiences you will ever have. It's the size of a postage stamp. I think we have aircraft carriers bigger than Israel. And when you approach the Temple Mount, things start to become very, very clear to you. And as you walk around the old walled city, I will tell you that it became very clear to me that there is one group of people that can live with each other and leave their sacred spaces alone. When you go into what was the room of the Last Supper, and you see that it is all mosque and Islamic writing on the walls, but it is in the hands of, if I'm not mistaken now, the Christians, but that has been left, those markings have been left now. There is one religion that seems to try to erase the others in the old city of Jerusalem, and that must not be allowed to happen. Back in a second.